Bottles.
Hey everyone, welcome. Dominic here with Smart Catholics Mastermind. Today joined by Jessica Gerhardt. Jessica, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, Mastermind, it's a live series to meet the minds and hearts of Catholic creators. They devote their time and talent to mastering their vocation so that you can live a fuller life faster. Now, Jessica is a cradle Catholic originally from Santa Monica, California. She is a singer, songwriter, ukuleleist, rosary maker, painter, community builder, and a speaker with over a decade of work in ministry, music, and art. Glad to have you on the show, Jessica.
Glad to be here.
So, I like to start with a story to help people get to know you, kind of like from the inside out. Like, was there a moment at a few years back or something where you began to realize you couldn't stay who you were? You had to change and do something different with yourself in your life.
Well, definitely making the shift from being a full-time youth minister to a freelancing artist and creative was
Mm-hmm.
a big shift, and it took a lot of discernment. I'd felt quite a particular calling to music when I was in college. I'd read the book The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and I was praying one night in the chapel at my college, all by myself because it was like an all night vigil, and I took a shift at like 1 a.m, so no one else was there. And I was just singing because the chapel had really wonderful acoustics, and I felt this deep sense of calling to keep doing that. And I was like arguing with this voice, like, what do you mean do this? Like show up at the chapel at 1 a.m? And I had a sense that the voice was like, pursue music. And I argued and I was like, well, here's all the reasons why I'm not qualified to do that. I didn't have any formal music training. I didn't come from a wealthy family. I, felt like having grown up in LA, I was like, really, I'm going to pursue a creative career. Like, I don't want to be a wannabe, like all of the things that were just like, don't do it. And then I felt like God was just kind of like Aladdin in the animated version, just like on the magic carpet, like, do you trust me? And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I do. So coming out of college, I moved back home to LA and really didn't know where to begin. I had a few people I knew from creative industries, but like, they introduced me to this person and that person, but I was just like, what are the first steps to even take? And I ended up looking for work for about a year and a half and found a full-time youth ministry position, which basically gave me the stability to start making money to be able to pay for recording and producing and things like that. And also gave me the ability to move out and have my own space to just be a creative. I had a roommate. Um, and and also youth ministry was satisfying other gifts and senses that I had. I had a lot of love for God and gifts for working with young people and being relatable with young people,
Mm-hmm.
um, and just mentoring. And also it just kind of creatively gave me opportunities to develop skills in community building, relationship building, all of which connect with music too. And my spiritual director has really helped me to see that it's not like I left ministry to go do music, but rather I'm just doing a different kind of ministry.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the secular world or religious, it's still all ministry. And so I kind of hit a point after having done full-time youth ministry for 7 or 8 years, of feeling like, okay, this is a time in my life when if I step out and take this risk and this leap, I feel like I have enough connections, enough of a sense of having established myself within the creative communities that I want to be a part of, to take this risk and start working as a musician, and focusing more on being an artist, and still be available to youth ministry events here and there, but to really focus more on the music and the art, because I figured if I don't take this leap now, I may never be in a position to take this
Mm-hmm.
leap, given just the circumstances of life that can come up. So prayed
Mm-hmm.
about it for about a year. It was like an ongoing discernment for, well, many years, but a very intentional, like, okay, is this the year? And made that leap in July of 2019. So I was a freelancer for about 9 months before the pandemic started. And it was a good 9 months of, I guess I just have to trust you, God, to really prepare me for like the pandemic shutting down like every avenue of work that I had established as a freelancer, and be like, okay, this is just another new, even deepening season of trust. So, yeah.
Wow. So, what are you now doing today? I mean, I was looking at your website, and you've got an. How recent is your latest album? And you're also a speaker.
I put out my debut EP under my name. I did have an EP out in like 2014 that was under a band name, but my latest album release was Be My Hands in 2019. So I literally left my full-time job, released my EP, went on my first tour like all
Wow.
in 2019. And had I waited one more year, I wouldn't have been able to do a tour because of the pandemic. So it
Right.
was very, fortuitous that the timing was what it was.
Mm.
But and since then, I've released a bunch of singles, and I'm working towards recording. I've been in the midst of recording another or a full album. My Be My Hands was a 5-song album, so EP is extended play, like a short album,
Okay.
and I'm working towards an LP, a long play album, full album. Still deciding how many songs are going to be on that, but more than 9. Um, and Yeah, I've just been recording music. Sort of during this past year and a half, was doing some online shows. Now I'm starting to get back out into performing live in person, like with outdoor backyard concerts and things like that.
Nice.
Um, yeah, and yeah.
Yeah. So with your then the speaking ministry, sort of the teaching and so on, I imagine a lot of that comes out of almost a decade of experience working with youth, and the questions today are ones that we're still struggling to find answers to. So what is it? What are some of the topics that are near and dear to you that you speak on?
Um, Discernment of spirits, particularly. I'm my spiritual director is a Jesuit, and I have a lot of formation in Ignatian spirituality, and I think it's a sorely underutilized resource in the church.
I'd love to come back to that and ask you what that means, but go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, sure. So I love speaking about that. Really, just how to pray, and because I think when we tell kids just pray, they're kind of like, "Am I supposed to hear a voice? Because I don't hear a voice. Am I supposed to hallucinate?" So how do you discern what is God's voice? I think that's really a necessary thing to talk to young people about. I also love to talk about feminism. I love to talk about chastity as a virtue while also deconstructing all of the abusive and problematic and harmful aspects of purity culture.
Mm-hmm.
I like to talk about race and privilege and what those words mean, and examine those things and how we can unpack them within the American Catholic Church. Um, I I like to talk about things related to inclusion and how do we shift our approach in the church, while wrestling with what the church's teachings are, but how do we find ways to really be more inclusive, and how is evangelization really about going out and meeting people where they're at, and being Christ to them where they're at, rather than being like, well, here's where all the truth is. So just be more like us, come to us, meet us on our terms. I think that's been an approach in the evangelical world, and even like how we approach evangelization. And I don't know how well that's working. So I think if we really want to continue to see Christ's ministry reaching more people, and if that's really our mission as Catholics, as universal people, followers of the way, then we need to meet people where they're at and find ways to connect what Jesus was talking about with their experience.
Mm-hmm. No, they're the critical key topics for all of us today. Well, especially in America, First World West. But take us back to Ignatian spirituality. What is it that you find in there that's so valuable? And let's pretend I know nothing about it. What is it?
So Saint Ignatius, he was, a very kind of arrogant, proud soldier. He ends up getting his leg like injured by a cannonball, becomes kind of he's sick, he's recovering, he has his leg reconstructed. And during his time of basically not being able to do and do and do and achieve all the vainglory, he comes to read, he spends some time reading about the lives of the saints, and he's like, oh, why was I all vainglory for myself and Spain and, wanting all these proud, pompous things? I'm just going to be like, for the glory of God. And so ad majorem Dei gloriam is the kind of the slogan of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. But even that was like his jumping off point, and he still had a lot of vainglory and pride in like, I just have to outdo all the saints. And then his path kind of became one of, okay, I just need to let go of all of that. So his spirituality became very centered around this idea of detachment, which sounds like indifference, the word is indifference that he uses, which sounds like, not caring. But when Ignatius uses the word indifference, it's a word intended to mean just holding all things lightly, holding all options as lightly as possible, and only choosing that which is for the greatest good of my relationship with God, what will help me grow closer to God, what will help me help others grow closer to God. So only choosing that, and that's the first principle and foundation that St. Ignatius bases like all his other kind of guides and rules for life basically on. And a lot of these rules for discernment of spirits he establishes when he does what he developed into the spiritual exercises. He kind of spent like 30 days or so, it might have been 40, but he spends all this time just kind of in isolation, in prayer, in wrestling with God, in wrestling with his ego, and really examining all these different things within himself. And that's been developed now into the spiritual exercises. I'm actually in the middle of doing the spiritual exercises for the first time, the 19th annotation, which is spiritual exercises in everyday life. So instead of going away for 30 days and being in silence to reflect on God and being in connection with God, I'm doing about 45 minutes to an hour of prayer every day for 9 months. So, yeah.
Wow. Beautiful. And I like the, our Holy Father himself is a Jesuit, and he's got this, I don't know enough about it, honestly, and I'd love to know more, but this ability to very carefully discern between, maybe you can articulate this better, between ignoring evil or ignoring a situation, endorsing it, and finding the kind of Christ thread through something to find the heart of the person, find, like you said, where they're at, to accompany them, to encounter them.
Yeah, sure. I mean, at least when I'm hearing that, my response is, I think if we understand that we are made in God's image and we are very good, then I feel like sin is when we like become disintegrated from the God that is already in us, like from our connection with God, our imago Dei that we are. So I really think of sin as really like sinful behaviors as like symptoms of a wound, of a disintegration. And so the antidote isn't telling someone, oh, hey, you're sinning, stop sinning. It's like kind of like a doctor being like, oh, you're coughing, well, you should really stop that. It's like, okay, well, why is this person coughing? Oh, they've got mucus in their lungs. Oh, we've got to do something about that. What is the rift? What is the wound that a person has that causes them to forget that they are intrinsically beloved? That's, union with God is, who is love, is knowing God's love, being filled with God's love, being so consumed with that that love, that we can't help but pour it out. We are vessels of that love to one another. That's our existence as human beings, as created out of love, for love, by love. So when we become disintegrated from that, when we forget who we are, we act out of character of how we're intended to be, how we're created to be. And so instead of focusing on all of the like shoulds and the do nots and all that, let's come back to how do we cultivate healthy practices of recognizing who we are, and how do we affirm that in others, and do we focus on that, or do we like to try to correct people first and then try to be like, now that you're doing what we think you should be doing, let's bring you back into the fold. That's a very backwards way of
I
approaching.
mean, we don't even like it when people do it to us. How
No.
could we imagine that, being a good first step, or best foot forward, with anybody else? But
Yeah.
Jessica, how can people get in touch with you and check out your album and follow your work?
Thank you. Yeah. I'm on all of the streaming platforms, Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, you name it, under Jessica Gerhardt, just as it's spelled there. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook at J Gerhardt Music. And I'm pretty active on Instagram. That's a good place to get a look at or get my attention. And yeah, I mean, I pretty much, if you Google my name, you'll find me on a lot of different places. I've written some articles for Femme Catholic, a Catholic feminist blog. I've got some videos on YouTube. So yeah, that's the best place to find me. Just type my name and see what comes up.
Wonderful. Well, that sounds great. Thanks again for joining us. And then for those who are watching live or catching the replay, thank you. And if you enjoyed this, share this with your one friend that you think would like to see it. Then come and regroup with us in the free Catholic community on smartcatholics.com. We are free of trolls and ads and toxicity. We are faithful to the Holy Father, Pope Francis, and the Church, and we're committed to a culture of kindness and learning. Does that sound like you? Then come and join us. Thanks again, Jessica. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Absolutely, you too. Thanks.